A 6-month pregnant woman is on her hands and knees, tears streaming down her face as she picks up the shattered pieces of her grandmother's vase. Standing over her isn't just her millionaire husband, Julian. It's his mistress, Isabella, who is sipping champagne in her living room. Julian watches, his face a mask of cold indifference, as Isabella grinds her stiletto heel into the plush carpet, inches from the pregnant woman's hand. "You're pathetic," the mistress sneers. "He's mine now. You and that thing are just baggage." The husband says nothing, but what neither of them knows is that the wife, Martha, has just hit send on a 3-word text. He let her. And that text just lit up the phones of 3 of the most powerful men in the country. The penthouse on Park Avenue was less a home and more a museum of Julian Vance's success. It was all glass, chrome, and cold white marble, with views that swallowed Manhattan whole. For Martha Vance, it was a beautiful cage. At 6 months pregnant, the cold surfaces felt even more unforgiving. Martha had met Julian Vance at a university benefit. He was charisma poured into a bespoke Tom Ford suit, the self-made real estate and tech mogul behind Vance Innovations. He had swept her off her feet. She came from a family, the Sterlings, whose wealth was so old it was quiet, almost invisible. Her family hadn't built, they had endured. They owned foundations, capital firms, and data empires. Her eldest brother, Phoebe, had been the most vocal. "He's hollow, Ellie," he'd said, his voice quiet but absolute at their pre-wedding dinner. "His ambition has no foundation. It's just hunger." Martha, blinded by love and a desperate need to have something she had chosen, had cut them off. "You don't control me," she'd said. That was 2 years ago. She hadn't spoken to Phoebe, Alistair, or Sebastian since. The coldness started 3 months ago. It began subtly. Julian, who once couldn't keep his horns off her, now slept on the far edge of the king-sized bed. "The baby needs space," he'd murmur, already half asleep. Then came the late-night emergencies at Vance Innovations. He would come home at 3 a.m., or not at all, smelling of a perfume she didn't own, a specific, musky scent. Armani Privé, Ambre Eccentrico. Martha tried. She would wait up for him, a meal she'd cooked herself growing cold on the marble island. She'd show him the sonogram pictures. "Look, Julian, her nose. The doctor says it looks like yours." Julian would glance up from his phone, a fleeting, tight-lipped smile. "That's great, Martha. Fantastic. Listen, I have to take this call." He wasn't just distant. He was gone. The man she married had been replaced by this cold, irritated stranger. Her world shrank to the penthouse. The staff, once friendly, now averted their eyes, taking their orders from Julian's new executive assistant, a woman Martha had never met, but whose name, Isabella Thorne, was suddenly on every catering order and household memo. One Tuesday, Martha was arranging flowers, pale pink peonies, when the private elevator dinged. Julian never came home before 8 p.m. But it wasn't Julian. A woman stepped out. She was stunning in the way that defied nature, all sharp angles, raven black hair, and lips painted a merciless red. She was wearing a crimson dress so tight it looked poured on, and she was sniffing the air. "Peonies. God, how dreadfully suburban," the woman said, her voice a low purr. She walked past Martha as if she were a piece of furniture, running a manicured finger along the fireplace. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" Martha asked, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. The woman turned, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "I'm Isabella. Isabella Thorne. And you must be the wife." Martha's blood ran cold. This was the name on the memos. This was the woman whose perfume haunted her husband's clothes. You shouldn't be here, Martha said, her voice trembling but firm. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Isabella said, walking over and picking up a framed photo of Martha and Julian from their wedding day. She studied it. This was before he knew what he really wanted. Before me. Get out, Martha said, moving toward the house phone. Isabella laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Don't bother. Julian knows I'm here. He's the one who gave me the key. Isabella set the photo down, face down, on the table. He's just sentimental. He didn't know how to tell you that it's over. He's bored, Martha. He's bored of this apartment, and he's bored of you. Each word was a physical blow. Martha staggered back, leaning against the counter. Julian loves me. I'm carrying his child. You're carrying his anchor, Isabella corrected, her eyes flicking to Martha's swollen stomach with undisguised contempt. He's a titan, and you're dragging him down. But don't worry, I'm here to fix that. Just then, the elevator dinged again. Julian walked in, his briefcase in hand. He stopped, seeing both women. His eyes darted from Martha's pale, tear-streaked face to Isabella's triumphant smirk. Julian, Martha breathed, relief washing over her. Thank God. Tell this woman to leave. Julian loosened his tie. He looked at Martha, his eyes flat, devoid of the warmth she remembered. Martha, don't be dramatic, he said, his voice weary. Isabella she's a guest. A guest? She let herself in, Julian. She said you gave her a key. Julian sighed, walking past Martha to pour himself a whiskey. We need to talk. Isabella and I. We're working on a new project. A big one. She's going to be around a lot. A project? Martha's voice cracked. Isabella moved to Julian's side, sliding her arm through his, her red nails pressing into his suit. He means we are the project, darling. The future. Martha looked at her husband. He didn't pull away. He didn't defend her. He just took a long drink of his whiskey, his eyes fixed on the Manhattan skyline, refusing to meet hers. The cage had just gotten infinitely smaller. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. Isabella was a ghost who had decided to haunt the living. She didn't move in, but she might as well have. She'd arrive in the mornings with Julian, ostensibly for strategy meetings, wearing his silk robes and drinking coffee from Martha's favorite mug. She systematically erased Martha from her own home. One afternoon, Martha came in from a doctor's appointment to find Isabella directing movers in the main study. What's going on? Martha demanded. Julian needs a proper home office, Isabella said, not bothering to look at her. This reading nook you created is useless. We're replacing this, she said, tapping Martha's comfortable armchair with a leather chaise, and the walls are being painted charcoal grey. This is my house, Martha whispered, though the words felt hollow even to her. It's a man's house, Isabella countered, her eyes sweeping over Martha. It needs a strong woman's touch. Not this. But the true cruelty was reserved for Martha's pregnancy. Isabella was obsessed with it, with reminding Martha of what she was becoming. You're just enormous, Isabella would say at the dinner table, which she now joined nightly. Julian, are you sure it's just one? Maybe it's a litter. Julian, deep in his phone, would just grunt. Pass the salt, Isabella. Martha would sit there, her food untouched, the baby kicking inside her, as if sensing the venom in the room. The final straw of this slow torture came on a Friday evening. Julian was hosting a small dinner for potential investors in Vance Innovations. Martha, desperate to feel like the lady of the house, had spent the afternoon preparing. She'd put on a deep emerald velvet maternity dress and had the staff use her grandmother's china. Her grandmother, the matriarch of the Sterling family, had left her one specific thing: a heavy, hand-knitted cashmere blanket, a deep sterling blue. It was Martha's one comfort. She kept it on the sofa and would wrap herself in it as the nights grew colder. Isabella arrived, not as a guest, but on Julian's arm, as the co-host. She wore a backless silver dress that glittered under the lights. "Martha, you look comfortable," Isabella said, her gaze a public dismissal. The investors, Mr. and Mrs. Davies, were polite, but clearly confused by the dynamic. Julian introduced Isabella as his senior vice president and business partner. He introduced Martha as my wife, Martha. The dinner was tense. Isabella dominated the conversation, flawlessly detailing Q4 projections and 5-year expansion plans. Julian watched her with a hungry, proud look Martha hadn't seen directed at her in years. After dinner, they moved to the living room for cognac. Isabella, holding a glass of red wine, a deep Cabernet, strolled around the room, laughing at something Mr. Davies said. Martha was sitting on the sofa, her hand resting on the blue cashmere blanket, when Isabella stumbled. It was a theatrical, unbelievable trip. The entire glass of red wine arched through the air and saturated the blue blanket. "Oh no," Isabella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in mock horror. "Oh my goodness, your blanket! It's ruined!" Martha stared at the dark red stain spreading like a wound. It was the only piece of her family she had left. She looked up, her eyes blurred with tears, and saw the small, vicious smile on Isabella's face before it vanished. You did that on purpose," Martha breathed. The room went silent. Mr. Davies looked awkward. "Martha!" Julian snapped, his face dark with embarrassment. "Apologize to Isabella. It was an accident." "It wasn't," Martha said, her voice shaking with a rage she hadn't felt in months. "She's been doing this for weeks. She's trying to erase me. Tell them, Julian. Tell them who she really is." Isabella's eyes filled with crocodile tears. "Julian, darling, she's scaring me. It must be the hormones. She's unhinged." Julian's face was stone. He walked over, not to Martha, but to Isabella. He put a comforting arm around her. "Martha, you are making a scene," he hissed, his voice low so the guests wouldn't hear. "Go to your room. Now. You're embarrassing me." "Embarrassing you?" Martha's voice rose. "She is destroying our home, Julian, and you're letting her. I said, go!" Julian commanded. Martha looked at the investors, their faces a mix of pity and discomfort. She looked at Isabella, who was nestled against Julian's chest, a look of pure triumph on her face. And she looked at her husband, who wouldn't even meet her eyes. She stood up, pulling the ruined, dripping blanket with her, and walked to their bedroom. She locked the door. She didn't cry. Not yet. She sank to the floor, her back against the cold wood. She heard the muffled laughter resume from the living room. He hadn't come after her. He hadn't defended her. She picked up her phone. She typed Phoebe into her contacts. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She couldn't. The shame was too great. Admitting he was right, that she had been a fool, was a different kind of death. She had chosen this. She had to endure it. She put the phone down, wrapped the damp, wine-stained blanket around her, and finally, she wept. The breaking point didn't come with a bang. It came with a stiletto heel. A week later, Julian announced he was hosting the annual Vance Innovations Charity Gala. Not at a hotel, at the penthouse. "It's to show stability," he'd said, his eyes on a stock ticker. "The board needs to see strength. I want you. front and center. Martha felt a flicker of hope. Me? You want me to host? Of course, Julian said, almost gently. You're my wife. Just try to look presentable. Isabella's firm is handling the logistics, so just stay out of her way. The hope died. She was to be a prop. The night of the gala, the penthouse was unrecognizable. Isabella's team had transformed it into a decadent jungle of black orchids and crimson lighting. Waiters with champagne trays navigated the crowd of New York's financial elite. Martha wore a custom-made silver gown, one of the few things that still fit her. She stood by the entrance, greeting guests with a smile that felt like cracking porcelain. Julian was at the center of the room, a king in his court, and at his side, in a liquid gold dress that left nothing to the imagination, was Isabella. She wasn't acting as staff. She was acting as hostess, her hand on Julian's back, whispering in his ear, laughing with his investors. Martha watched them. Every laugh, every shared glance was a fresh cut. People murmured. They saw the heavily pregnant wife standing alone by the door, and the business partner draped over the husband. Martha's feet ached. The baby was pressing against her ribs. She just needed to sit down. She moved toward a small alcove, only to find Isabella and Julian in a quiet, heated discussion. "Can't just throw her out, Bella," Julian was hissing. "Not while she's pregnant. The optics are terrible." "I don't care about optics, Julian," Isabella snapped. "I'm tired of sharing you. I want her gone. After tonight, you tell her, or I will." "It's not that simple. Her family who she hasn't spoken to in 2 years. They're irrelevant. Grow a spine, Julian, or I'll find a man who has one." Isabella turned to leave, and she saw Martha. Her face, furious a moment ago, morphed into a cold, superior smirk. Eavesdropping, Martha? How common. Martha felt the blood drain from her face. He's not throwing me out." Isabella stepped closer, her voice dropping. "You're a contract, darling, a starter marriage. And now your term is up." She looked down at Martha's stomach. "You thought that," she flicked a finger at the baby bump, "would save you? It just made you pathetic." "Stop," Martha said, her hands shaking. "Just stop. Tell her, Julian," Isabella called over her shoulder. "Tell her she's done." Julian watched, his face pale and sweaty. He couldn't be the bad guy. "Julian, please," Martha begged, looking at her husband. This was his moment, his chance to fix this, to choose. He looked at Martha, at her swollen belly, her tear-filled eyes. Then he looked at Isabella, all fire and passion. He made his choice. He walked over to Martha. This isn't working, Martha. Isabella is right. It's over." The words hit her so hard she physically stumbled backward. She tripped on the edge of an ornate Persian rug. She fell. It wasn't a graceful fall. It was a heavy, clumsy collapse, her hands flying out to catch herself, her body twisting to protect her stomach. She landed hard on her hands and knees. The music stopped. The chatter died. Every eye in the room turned to the pregnant wife, on all fours, on the floor. Martha looked up, humiliated. She saw Julian, frozen. Then Isabella moved. She walked slowly, deliberately, toward Martha. She didn't offer a hand. She didn't stop. She walked to her and over her. To get past, Isabella had to lift her leg high. Her red-bottomed Christian Louboutin stiletto flashed. As she stepped over Martha's prone body, she accidentally brought her heel down, not on Martha, but next to her hand, grazing her knuckles. A final, pointed assertion of dominance. "Oops," Isabella whispered, loud enough for only Martha to hear. Clumsy me. Do try to get up. You're blocking the champagne. That was the step. It wasn't a physical assault. It was worse. It was a public execution of her dignity. Martha stared at the floor. She saw her husband, the millionaire, watch his mistress step over his pregnant wife. And he did nothing. In fact, he flinched, worried Isabella might have scuffed her shoe. He quickly offered Isabella his hand. "Careful, Bella," he said, steadying her. He didn't even look at Martha on the floor. A cold, sharp clarity cut through Martha's shock. The love was gone. The hope was gone. Even the shame was gone, burned away by a pure, Arctic rage. A security guard, a man named Robert, who always held the door for her, rushed forward and gently helped her to her feet. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Martha didn't answer. She pulled her phone from her small clutch. Her hands were perfectly steady. She didn't go to her contacts. She went to a secure messaging app, one her brother Alistair had insisted she install years ago. For emergencies, Ellie, real ones. She opened a group chat named Sterling. It contained 3 names: Phoebe, Alistair, Sebastian. She typed 3 words. He let her, and she pressed send. Then she looked up at Julian, who was now looking at her with annoyance, as if she had ruined his party. "Martha, for God's sake, go to your room. You've made enough of a scene." Martha just smiled, a small, terrifying smile. "Okay," she said. She turned and walked, not to her room, but to the guest room. She locked the door. She sat on the bed. And she waited. It was 11:17 p.m. in New York. In Singapore, it was 11 to 17 a.m. Phoebe Sterling, the eldest, was in the final stages of a $20 billion acquisition. He was sitting in a holographic conference room at Sterling Global Capital, negotiating with Japanese investors. His personal phone, a hardened device that usually only chimed for global market alerts, vibrated once on the table. He glanced down. A message from Sterling. From Martha. He let her. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The investors saw the look on Phoebe's face. His calm, negotiating demeanor evaporated, replaced by something they had only ever seen in hostile takeovers. Phoebe Sterling stood up, cutting off the Japanese CEO mid-sentence. "Gentlemen, a family matter has come to my attention. The deal is no longer $20 billion. It is $22 billion non-negotiable, and you have 30 seconds to accept, or Sterling Capital will exit the Japanese market and short your currency into oblivion." The Japanese CEO, stunned, stammered, "Mr. Sterling, this is highly irregular." 20 seconds. We accept. We accept." Phoebe nodded. "Good." He didn't say another word. He terminated the call, walked out of the conference room, and straight onto his private Gulfstream G700. He made 2 calls. The first was to London, where it was 4:17 a.m. Alistair Sterling, the middle brother, was asleep. Alistair ran Aegis Analytics, a data and cybersecurity firm so powerful it was rumored to be the shadow partner to MI6 and the CIA. His phone didn't ring. It screamed, a specific alarm. He was awake before the first ring finished. He saw the message from Martha. "Phoebe?" Alistair's voice was already cold. "She's in trouble," Phoebe said, the G700's engines roaring to life. "Julian, find out everything. I want his financials, his digital footprint, his mistresses, his high school misdemeanors. I want to know what he had for breakfast, and I want the name of the here she's talking about." "Already on it," Alistair said. "The Aegis is awake." Alistair didn't have a team. He had a global network. He typed a few commands into his home terminal. Across the world, data analysts, forensic accountants, and white-hat hackers at Aegis Analytics started to move. Their target, Julian Vance. The second call was to Los Angeles, where it was 8:17 p.m. Sebastian Sterling, the youngest, was at a studio premiere. He ran the Sterling Media Group, a global empire of news outlets, film studios and PR firms. He was on the red carpet when his phone vibrated. He saw Martha's text, then the incoming call from Phoebe. He excused himself immediately, stepping into his limo. "Tell me," Sebastian said, his charismatic smile gone, replaced by the family's trademark chill. "Martha needs us," Phoebe said. "Alistair is gathering intel. You're handling the exit. I want her child, and everything she is owed. I want him left with nothing, and I want the press handled. This is not to be a scandal for her. It is to be an execution for him." "Lawyers are spinning up now," Sebastian said. "I'll have our top divorce attorney, Elias Thorne, no relation, ironically, on a plane to New York by midnight. I'll handle the narrative. By the time we're done, Julian Vance won't be able to get a reservation at an Applebee's." "I'm 12 hours out," Phoebe said. "Hold the line." "We will." For the next 12 hours, the Sterling brothers orchestrated a war. From his plane, Phoebe called contacts at every major bank. "I'm calling in the favor you owe me. Vance Innovations. I need a status on all their liquid assets. Freeze them." In Los Angeles, Sebastian was on the phone with his legal team. "No, not a standard divorce. I want an annulment on grounds of fraud. And I want an immediate injunction. Freeze his personal accounts, his corporate accounts, everything. The petition will be filed at 9 a.m. tomorrow, citing extreme emotional distress and material fraud." In London, Alistair was watching data flow across his screens. It was worse and better than they could have imagined. "Got him," Alistair murmured at 6 a.m. He called Phoebe and Sebastian into a secure conference call. "Julian Vance is a fraud," Alistair said, his voice clipped. "Vance Innovations is a house of cards. He's $90 million in debt, leveraged against assets he doesn't own. He's been cooking the books for 3 years. The gala tonight? It wasn't a charity. It was a desperate last-ditch effort to find investors before the whole thing collapses." "And the mistress?" Phoebe asked. "Isabella Thorne. Real name, Jennifer Peterson from Akron, Ohio. A long, long list of aliases. She's a professional. She finds wealthy, failing men, attaches herself, and helps them siphon the last of their funds into offshore accounts before they go under. I've found it. A shell corporation in the Caymans. Thorne Holdings. Julian has funneled over $15 million into it in the last 6 months. He wasn't leaving Martha, Sebastian realized. He was robbing her. He married her for the Sterling name, hoping to use it as collateral. "Exactly," Alistair said. "And when we cut her off, she was useless to him, except as a cover. Now, he's planning to flee the country with the mistress, leaving Martha to deal with the bankruptcy and the SEC. There was a dead silence on the line. "Phoebe?" Sebastian asked. "He's not just a bad husband," Phoebe said, his voice terrifyingly calm as his jet descended toward New York. "He's a thief. Alistair, forward that data packet to the U.S. Attorney's office, anonymously." "Done," Alistair said. "Sebastian, what's our ETA?" "My jet lands at Titterborough in 1 hour. Alistair's lands in 90 minutes. Elias Thorne, our lawyer, is already at the New York office." "Good," Phoebe said, as he watched the sun rise over the Atlantic. "We're not just taking him down, we're erasing him." It was 9 a.m. Martha hadn't slept. She had stayed locked in the guest room, ignoring the knocks, first angry, then pleading from Julian. The party guests had long since fled, sensing the toxic cloud that had descended. She heard Julian and Isabella in the living room. Their voices were low and frantic. They were arguing about money. The elevator dinged. A new voice. A man's voice. "Mr. Vance?" the man said. "I'm Elias Thorne from the firm of Sterling and Associates. I'm here to deliver these." There was the sound of heavy paper. "What is this?" Julian yelled. "A divorce? You've got to be kidding me. She can't do this." "Those aren't divorce papers, Mr. Vance," Elias's calm voice replied. "That is an immediate injunction and a temporary restraining order. My client, Martha Sterling, has petitioned the court. You are hereby ordered to cease all contact with her. Furthermore, a motion has been filed freezing all your personal and corporate assets, pending an investigation into material fraud." "Fraud? What fraud?" "The $15 million you illegally transferred to an offshore entity, Thorne Holdings for starters," Elias said. Isabella shrieked. "You told me that was clean. Julian, you idiot!" "Shut up, Bella," Julian roared. "You, get out of my house." "It's not your house, Mr. Vance," Elias said. Right on cue, the private elevator, which had been summoned from the lobby, dinged loudly. The heavy steel doors slid open. Martha opened the guest room door. 3 men stood in the elevator bay. They were not dressed for a fight. They were dressed for an acquisition. Each wore a dark, perfectly tailored suit that cost more than a mid-sized car. They were the Sterling brothers. Phoebe, the eldest, stood center. He was built like a vault, his presence sucking the air from the room. Alistair, the middle, was slighter, his eyes sharp and analytical, holding a slim, encrypted tablet. Sebastian, the youngest, was handsome, his charismatic smile replaced with a look of utter contempt. They stepped out, their hard-soled shoes echoing on the marble floor. Julian Vance, the Titan, shrank. He knew of the Sterling brothers. He had never, in his worst nightmares, imagined facing them. "Julian," Phoebe said. His voice wasn't loud, but it shook the windows. "You put your hands on our sister." "I never touched her," Julian squeaked, taking a step back. She's emotional. She fell." "He's lying," Martha said, her voice clear. She walked out from the guest room, her silver gown rumpled, her face pale, but her eyes on fire. "He let his mistress step over me while I was on the floor." The 3 brothers' gazes shifted to Martha. The coldness vanished, replaced instantly with a deep, aching concern. Phoebe walked past Julian as if he were air and went straight to his sister, enveloping her in a hug. "You're safe now, Ellie," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "We're here. We're sorry it took so long." "I'm sorry I didn't call," she wept into his chest. "I am so glad you're here," Isabella said, her voice suddenly sweet. She sashayed over to Sebastian, the handsome one. "I'm Isabella. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Julian, he's the problem. He lied to me. Sebastian held up a hand, silencing her. "We know who you are. Jennifer Peterson." Isabella's face collapsed. The color drained from it. "Alistair?" Phoebe said, still holding Martha. Alistair stepped forward, tapping his tablet. "Julian Vance, Vance Innovations, a shell company with $92.4 million in debt. You have 6 outstanding loans, all defaulted as of 8:01 a.m. this morning, when our banks called them in." You can't do that," Julian stammered. "We did," Alistair said. "Your credit lines are frozen. Your corporate accounts are seized. The SEC received a very detailed, very anonymous tip this morning regarding your wire fraud and embezzlement. I suspect you'll be hearing from them by lunch," Julian started to hyperventilate. "And Jennifer," Alistair continued, turning to the mistress. "Thorne Holdings, your Cayman account. An injunction has frozen it. The $15 million is gone. We're currently working with the IRS on the multiple counts of tax evasion and, let's see, oh yes, extortion from your last 3 clients. It seems you have a pattern." Isabella lunged, not at Alistair, but at Julian. "You ruined me," she screamed, raking her nails down his face. "Get her off me," Julian yelped. "Robert," Phoebe called out. The security guard from last night, Robert, stepped into the apartment, along with 2 other uniformed officers. They hadn't been idle. Sebastian had hired the entire building's security staff as of 7 a.m. "Please escort Miss Peterson from the building," Phoebe said. "She will be met in the lobby by detectives from the NYPD's fraud division." "No, no!" Isabella screamed as Robert and another guard took her by the arms. "You can't do this! Julian, tell them! Tell them!" Julian was mute, blood trickling from the scratches on his face. Isabella was dragged, kicking and screaming into the elevator. The doors closed, silencing her. Now the room was quiet. It was just Martha, her brothers, and her husband. Julian sank onto a cold marble bench. He was a broken man. "My company. My life. It's all gone, in an hour." "It was gone before we got here," Sebastian said, adjusting his cuffs. "You built a fantasy on lies. We just turned on the lights." "Please," Julian whispered, looking at Martha. "Martha, please. Think of the baby. I'm sorry. I was confused. I love you. We can fix this." Martha looked at him, her eyes clear of tears for the first time in months. "No, Julian," she said, her voice strong. "You're right. It is over." But where will I go?" Julian asked, looking around the penthouse. "This is my home." Phoebe, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Mr. Vance, you seem to be under a misapprehension. You've been renting this penthouse for the last 2 years. The owner of the building is a holding company, Park Avenue Properties, LLC. "A company," he said, a glacial smile touching his lips, "which Sterling Global Capital acquired at 8:45 a.m. this morning. This is my house." This was the final blow. The house of cards had been blown away. "Robert," Phoebe said, "Mr. Vance will be leaving. He may take his suit and his briefcase. His other effects will be disposed of." "Yes, Mr. Sterling." Julian Vance, the millionaire mogul, was escorted out of his own home, past the 3 luxury cars idling in the driveway, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom, a silver McLaren, and a dark blue Bentley, and onto the streets of Manhattan with nothing but the suit on his back and 4 bloody scratches on his face. The reckoning was swift, but the recovery was a process. Sebastian's media company ensured the narrative was controlled. The headlines weren't about a messy divorce. They were about the stunning collapse of a fraudulent tech empire. Vance Innovations, a modern-day Enron. CEO Julian Vance, indicted on fraud, embezzlement. Socialite Isabella Thorne, arrested. Part of high-end extortion ring. Julian Vance, facing decades in federal prison, pled guilty. He testified against Isabella Jennifer Peterson to get a reduced sentence. He was sentenced to 12 years. Isabella, facing a mountain of evidence from Alistair's data packet, received 15. Martha never saw either of them again. The brothers moved her from the city immediately. They didn't take her to one of their cold, modern mansions. They took her home. Home was the Sterling family estate in upstate New York, a sprawling, warm compound of old stone, sprawling oaks, and fields that rolled down to the Hudson River. It was the house they had grown up in. Their mother's roses were still blooming. For the first week, Martha mostly slept. When she was awake, she was quiet, processing the trauma and the sudden, violent rescue. Her brothers, these titans of industry, reverted to the roles they'd always had. Phoebe, the leader, handled her life. He had the penthouse fumigated and all of Julian's things incinerated. He had her finances separated, establishing a new, ironclad trust for her and the baby that no one but she could touch. Alistair, the protector, handled her security. He had the estate hardened, not with guards but with technology. He also, quietly, put a private investigator on retainer, just to track Julian's family, his associates, he explained, to make sure no one ever gets the idea to bother you, ever again. Sebastian, the nurturer, simply stayed. He cancelled his studio meetings in LA and worked from the estate's library. He was the one who sat with her, who didn't press her to talk, but who was just there. He'd bring her tea, or her grandmother's unruined blue blanket. He'd had his legal team seize it from the penthouse as personal effects, and sent it to the world's top textile restoration expert in Paris. One evening they were all in the kitchen. Martha was finally eating. Sebastian was making pasta. "I was so stupid," Martha said suddenly, her voice thick. "You told me, Phoebe. You told me he was hollow. And I was so desperate to prove you wrong, to have something that was mine, that I walked right into the cage." Phoebe stopped stirring his coffee. He came and sat opposite her. "You weren't stupid, Ellie," he said, his voice gentle. "You were trusting. You want to see the good in people. That's not a weakness. It's the best part of our family. It's what he didn't deserve. He isolated me," she whispered, "and I let him. I let my pride keep me from calling you." "He didn't count on one thing," Alistair said, looking up from his laptop. "What's that?" "He counted on you being a sterling," Alistair said. "He counted on your pride. He just never, ever considered what would happen when he finally broke it. He forgot that when you break a sterling, the other sterlings break you back." A small, real smile touched Martha's lips. "You guys are ridiculous." "We're your brothers," Sebastian said, sliding a plate of pasta in front of her. "Eat. You're eating for two." The sterile, white silence of the private hospital wing was a stark contrast to the marble cage Martha had left behind. This silence wasn't cold. It was safe. It was a space cleared and secured by her brother's relentless efficiency. Phoebe had, in a single phone call, arranged for the entire floor to be cleared, citing a sensitive family matter. Alistair had personally, and likely illegally, vetted the hospital's digital security. Sebastian had handled the press, releasing a single, curt statement that Mrs. Martha Vance has been admitted for observation following a minor household accident and is requesting privacy. Martha's labor began 2 days later, not with the panic she had dreaded for months, the fear of facing it alone with a husband who saw her as an inconvenience, but with a calm, focused energy. When the first real contraction seized her, she didn't call for a nurse. She looked at Phoebe, who was sitting by her bedside, dictating hostile takeover terms into his phone. He stopped mid-sentence, his face paling. "Ellie, is it time?" "It's time, Phoebe," she breathed, gripping his hand. "Call the doctor." For the first time in his life, the titan of global finance fumbled, jabbing at the nurse's call button like a panicked teenager. Alistair and Sebastian, alerted by the sudden activity, rushed in. The next few hours were a blur of controlled chaos. Martha was a warrior, channeling every ounce of pain and betrayal into the singular, seismic task of bringing a new life into the world. Her brothers were her unlikely, terrified anchors. Phoebe, a man who commanded boardrooms of billionaires, was reduced to a stammering wreck by her side. "Breathe, Ellie, just breathe, like the book said. In, out. Is she doing it right? Nurse, is she breathing correctly?" Alistair, meanwhile, stood rigid in the corner, his eyes glued to the fetal heart rate monitor he had patched into his own tablet. "Vitals are stable. Heart rate is 140 BPM. Oxygen saturation is 99%. Everything is within expected parameters, Ellie. You are proceeding with optimal efficiency." Alistair, shut up! Sebastian snapped, wiping Martha's forehead with a cool cloth. You're doing amazing, Martha. Just amazing. Think of the Oscars. You're winning. You're giving the speech. Martha let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh, before another wave hit. She bore down, squeezing Phoebe's hand so hard he visibly winced, but didn't dare pull away. In that moment, she wasn't the broken wife. She wasn't a victim. She was a force of nature. And then a new sound filled the room, a strong, piercing, indignant wail. "She's here," the doctor announced, his voice bright. "A beautiful, healthy girl." They placed the baby on Martha's chest. Martha wept, a ragged, cleansing flood of tears that washed away the last traces of Julian Vance. This tiny, perfect, screaming creature was hers. This was the future. This was the only thing that had ever been real. She looked up at her brothers, who were clustered together, their faces a wreck of stunned, teary-eyed awe. "Her name," Martha whispered, her voice rough. "Her name is Lily. After Mum." That broke them. Phoebe turned away, his shoulders shaking. Sebastian openly sobbed. Alistair just stared, his fingers frozen over his tablet, as he watched his sister, his real sister, finally return to them. The three most powerful men in the country were instantly, irrevocably, and pathetically enslaved by a 7-pound, 2-ounce baby girl. Phoebe was the first to hold her, his massive hands, which had signed deals worth nations, looking comically large as he cradled her. She's so inefficiently constructed," he whispered, his voice thick. "Her fingers, they're illogical." He was instantly smitten. Within an hour, he had established a trust fund for her that would make her, independently, one of the wealthiest women in the country. Alistair was next. He held her stiffly, as if she were a priceless, unstable piece of technology. "I've secured her," he announced, to no one in particular. https www.google.com search Kokias, lilysterling.com, all social media handles, and a preliminary digital identity package are locked. I've also, created a new, encrypted nursery monitor protocol, the Aegis Crib 1.0. No one will be listening to her. Sebastian simply took her from Alistair, kissed her forehead, and began to hum an old Frank Sinatra tune. "Hello, gorgeous," he cooed. "Don't you worry about those two. Uncle Seb is going to teach you all about classic cinema and how to break hearts. You, my dear, are going to own the world." Life at the Sterling estate in upstate New York was a long, slow exhale. Martha's recovery was not just physical. It was a deprogramming. For the first few months, she was immersed in the simple, demanding rhythm of a newborn. The brothers, to the shock of their respective global staff, rearranged their lives. Phoebe moved Sterling Global Capital's HQ from Singapore to the New York office for 6 months. Alistair's London team was suddenly managed via 3 a.m. video calls. Sebastian put 2 blockbuster film productions on hold. They didn't just visit. They stayed. The healing came in small, quiet moments. It was 3:07 a.m. Lily was wailing, a colicky, inconsolable scream. Martha, exhausted and leaking milk, was pacing the nursery, tears of her own streaming down her face. "Please, Lily, please, just sleep." The door creaked open. It wasn't a nanny. It was Phoebe, his hair a rumpled mess, wearing a $2,000 silk robe. "My turn," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Phoebe, no, you have the Tokyo market open." "The market can wait. That's an order." He gently took the baby from her. "Go to sleep, Ellie. We've got this." Martha stood in the doorway and watched her brother, the vulture of Wall Street, pace the hall, his deep voice humming. Not a lullaby, but the live ticker results of the Nikkei index. Incredibly, Lily began to quiet. It was Alistair, sitting with her on the veranda 2 months later. She was idly scrolling through a news feed on the Aegis secured tablet he'd given her when she saw it, a small buried article. Julian Vance, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Beside it, co-conspirator Jennifer Peterson receives 15 years. Martha stared at the names. She expected to feel rage or triumph or even pity. Instead, she felt nothing. A cold, flat emptiness. The cage was gone, but the shadow remained. "He's not real anymore, Ellie," Alistair said quietly, not looking up from his own screen. "He's just a historical data point, an error that's been corrected. He's not your present. He's not Lily's future." It was Sebastian, 6 months later, pushing Lily on a swing in the garden. Martha was watching them, a real, genuine smile on her face when she saw a magazine on the table. It was a high society paper. On the cover was a smiling woman, a local Chicago socialite. The headline read, "Tragedy. Local philanthropist's wife loses home in bitter divorce." Martha picked it up. She read the story. A man, a pillar of the community, had been living a double life. He'd hidden all their assets, filed for bankruptcy, and left his wife and 2 children with nothing but crippling debt. The wife's family hadn't had the resources to fight him. She'd lost her home. "She didn't have you guys," Martha whispered, her blood running cold. She looked at Lily, safe and laughing in the sun. She looked at the sprawling, secure estate. Her rescue wasn't justice. It was an accident of birth. It was a privilege. The gratitude she felt was suddenly eclipsed by a white-hot, clarifying rage. That night, she scheduled a board meeting. The brothers assembled in the library at 9 p.m., amused. "Ellie, if this is about the nursery wallpaper, I told you, the one with the rockets is statistically," Alistair began. "Shut up, Alistair," Martha said. They all stopped. She was standing at the head of the antique oak table, just as their father used to. In front of her wasn't a baby book. It was a fully costed, multi-phase business plan. "What is this?" Phoebe asked, his amusement fading, replaced by curiosity. "It's my new life," Martha said. She tapped the cover page. "I'm calling it the Sterling Foundation for New Beginnings." She didn't ask. She told them. "My story is not unique because of what I suffered. It's unique because of the rescue I received. Julian Vances are everywhere. They don't all have millions. Some are just small-time bullies who know how to work the system, how to hide a pay stub, how to use emotional abuse to paralyze someone. And the women they trap don't have an army." She looked at her brothers, one by one. "So we are going to build them one." Her plan was ruthless, efficient, and brilliant. "This won't be a passive charity, a shelter that just hides women. This will be an arsenal. We will offer a one-stop shop for total domestic liberation. It will have 3 divisions. 1. The Elias Thorne Legal Division," she said, naming their top lawyer. "They will provide immediate, no-questions-asked legal representation. They won't just file for divorce. They will file injunctions, restraining orders, and fraud claims. They will bury these men in paperwork." 2. The Aegis Data Division. She looked at Alistair. "I need a public-facing version of what you did for me. A team of the best forensic accountants and white-hat hackers to find the hidden assets, the secret bank accounts, the offshore holdings, the Jennifer Peterson shell corporations. We will find the money. We will prove the fraud." 3. The Narrative Division. She looked at Sebastian. "Abusers thrive on silence and shame. They count on their victims being too embarrassed to speak. You're going to do the opposite. You will offer PR and media services to our clients. We will control the narrative. We will protect the victim, and we will publicly execute the abuser's reputation. We will make them toxic in their communities, at their jobs, at their country clubs. She finished, her chest heaving. The brothers were silent, staring at her. This was not the broken girl they had rescued from the penthouse floor. This was a Sterling. Phoebe was the first to speak. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. "Your budget is too small," he said. "Triple it. You'll need an endowment. And you're not just the head. You're the CEO and president. Welcome to the family business, Ms. Sterling. Let's get to work." 1 year later, the foundation launched with a gala. It was not held in a cold glass penthouse. Martha had chosen the New York Public Library, its old stone halls and soaring ceilings symbolizing knowledge, history, and endurance. The room was filled with politicians, judges, survivors, and the press. It was lit in a warm, strong, sterling blue. Martha stood backstage, her hands shaking. Lily was in the front row, sitting on Phoebe's lap, chewing on Alistair's very expensive watch. Sebastian found her, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Drink," he said. "They're waiting for you." "I can't," she whispered. "Seb, I'm still the woman who fell." Sebastian put his hands on her shoulders. He looked her right in the eye. "No, Ellie. You're not the woman who fell. You're the woman who got up. Now go out there and tell them." She walked onto the stage. The applause was thunderous. She gripped the podium, her knuckles white. "Good evening," she said, her voice echoing in the vast hall. "My name is Martha Sterling. A little over 2 years ago, I was a different person. I lived in a beautiful apartment that looked out over the city, a gilded cage, and I was a prop, a decoration in a life I didn't recognize." A hush fell. "My husband, my abuser, never hit me. He didn't have to. He used a balance sheet. He used isolation. He used humiliation. He used his mistress, a woman named Isabella Thorne, to systematically erase me from my own home. And one night, at a party in that home, he let her. He watched as she stepped over me, his 6 months pregnant wife, while I was on my hands and knees." Gasps rippled through the room. This was not the sanitized story they were expecting. "I was on the floor, humiliated," Martha continued, her voice gaining strength. "But in that moment, I did something I should have done months earlier. I made a call. I was one of the lucky ones. My family, my brothers. They had the resources to turn the tables. They had the power to turn on the lights and expose the fraud." She locked eyes with a U.S. senator in the front row. "But as I recovered, as I held my daughter, I was haunted by one single, furious question. What about the women who don't have the Sterling brothers on speed dial? What about the women who are told to be quiet, to not make a scene, to be grateful for their gilded cage?" She stepped out from behind the podium, walking to the front of the stage. "Tonight I have an answer. For every woman trapped in a marriage that is a fraudulent corporation, for every person who is being financially and emotionally bled dry by a con man, we are your answer. The Sterling Foundation for New Beginnings is not a shelter. We are an extraction team. We are not a helpline. We are an arsenal. We will be your lawyers. We will be your forensic accountants. We will be your publicists. We will find the hidden money. We will file the injunctions. We will protect your children. And we will help you, in the light of day, burn the cage to the ground." The room exploded. People were on their feet, the applause a deafening roar. Martha looked to the front row. Phoebe, Alistair, and Sebastian were not just clapping. They were standing. Phoebe was holding a sleeping Lily, and he nodded at Martha, his eyes shining with a pride that was blinding. He wasn't nodding at his broken little sister. He was nodding at his equal. Martha Sterling had found her foundation. It wasn't the hollow ambition of a con man. It was the enduring, unshakable power of her family, a power she now wielded not as a victim, but as a CEO, a mother, and a savior. And that is the story of Martha Sterling, a woman who was pushed to the floor only to rise up and build an empire. Her story is a powerful reminder that true wealth isn't in the bank accounts or the penthouses. It's in the family, whether by blood or by choice, that will show up when you send that 3-word text. Julian and Isabella thought they were untouchable, but they forgot the oldest rule in the book. Karma always comes, and sometimes it arrives in 3 luxury cars, wearing bespoke suits. Martha's revenge wasn't just getting her life back. It was using her pain to build a new beginning for thousands of others. What did you think of the brothers' arrival? Was it the most satisfying takedown you've ever heard? Let me know in the comments below. If you were moved by Martha's story of survival and ultimate triumph, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more true life stories of drama, karma, and justice. We'll see you in the next one.